Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about little things that I did to help build my self-confidence and learn to trust myself. So basically, I've never been a truly confident person. I've always struggled with seeing my own self-worth, and after a recent pretty big life change, I came to realize that it was no longer feasible to not be a confident person, and I just decided that I had to do something about it. It's as simple as that. Now, that's not to say that I think you can start fostering self-confidence overnight. I'm definitely still not the most confident person, but I think that implementing small changes into my day-to-day and really committing to doing them has helped me go from having almost zero confidence to being a slightly more confident person. I'm still a work in progress. So the first thing that I did was basically doing things that challenge my body. I've never felt fully comfortable in my body as myself. You know, some people can just easily like start dancing or whatever. I always felt like I needed a couple of drinks to feel comfortable doing stuff like that. So the first thing that I did to kind of change that was start doing things that maybe made me feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. So like, for example, I started taking Pilates classes. At first I was doing them at home so that I could become a little bit more familiar with the idea of Pilates. And then I started doing in-person classes, and that really helped build my self-confidence as well as my overall strength. And it kind of snowballed from there. Another thing I did was take swimming lessons, and I will tell you right now that taking adult swimming lessons is extremely humbling. My lessons were at the community pool, sandwiched between the parent and taught swimming lessons and the aquafit for senior citizens. There was one kind of like hour segment in between where I would show up with a bunch of other people that had no idea how to swim and basically start from scratch. And I'm happy to say that now I'm able to swim quite well, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I love going to the pool and swimming laps, and that really boosted my self-confidence and made me realize that I can trust my body to take care of me. The next thing I did to kind of foster self-trust and self-confidence was to do things to completion. So something that I love doing is reading. I'm a big reader. Something that I would do would be, I would sometimes get stuck and take a long time to finish a book because I would read a couple of pages, and I would blame social media for this probably, but I found that my attention span wasn't very good. So I decided that I would be somebody that never stops reading mid-chapter. I would always read a chapter to completion. And once I decided that and continued doing it, I just felt that I became somebody that, it sounds silly, but I became somebody that read chapters in full. And being able to switch from just doing a couple of pages here and there to finishing a chapter every time I sit down to read, I don't know why, but it just made me feel more confident. Another example of doing things to completion would be cleaning my apartment. So I've never been like a sloppy person, but I've definitely not been, you know, the most neat and tidy. I decided I wanted to trust myself more. I thought that I would start and finish a task that had to do with cleaning always. I wouldn't, you know, like get started on cleaning my bathroom or put my laundry in the washing machine and then put it in the dryer and leave it in the dryer for like days before putting it away. Once I started a task related to cleaning, I would do it to completion and not have, you know, to feel bad about leaving something half done and finishing it a few days later. Something else that helped me build self-confidence was learning new skills. I guess it kind of goes with the learning to swim thing, but for example, I studied French when I was in high school, and when I was a child, like all through school, I took French. I live in Canada, so that came pretty naturally, but I recently have been spending more time in Istanbul, and as such, I started taking Turkish lessons on Preply, and that was very humbling, and I have been doing it for, I want to say 6 months now, so it's been a slow process, but once you start seeing the progress that you're making and realizing that you can make connections or maybe communicate in ways that you couldn't before, it's such a good feeling to see that you're actually able to learn something, process it, and then use it in your day-to-day life. Another skill that I recently learned that really boosted my self-confidence was learning to drive. So I took driving lessons like every 16-year-old when I was in high school, but I just never went ahead and got my full license. I failed my first road test, and then I moved away to a big city and convinced myself that I just wasn't somebody that was meant to drive. And then 15 years later, I decided that it's time I grew up and got my driver's license. I don't know what kind of story I was telling myself, saying that I wasn't a good driver, I couldn't tell where I was on the road, all of these things that were just like limiting beliefs and completely untrue. Because after I took driving lessons for a couple of months, I realized that I'm actually a pretty good driver and I enjoy driving a lot. I don't get nervous, I think that I'm very safe, and I passed my road test on the first try. So that was something that gave me a lot of self-confidence, and it also helped me prove to myself that some of the things that I felt insecure about were just stories that I made up in my head. So I think it's important to challenge those stories and kind of prove yourself otherwise. It's a really good feeling to see that, you know, once you actually set out to do something that you thought you previously couldn't, you might be surprised at what you actually are able to achieve. Another way I learned to trust myself and build self-confidence was by being dependable to both myself and others. So, for example, if I told myself I wanted to go to the gym 3 times next week and I only went twice, it's not a great feeling, but if you tell yourself you're gonna go and then you go, you show up for yourself, you realize that you can trust what you tell yourself to do and you know you'll do it. And the same goes with other people. So if you make plans with a friend, for example, and then the day shows up, and we're all guilty of this, sometimes you don't feel like going out for drinks with a friend with like these plans that you've made a couple of weeks ago, and you're tempted to just cancel and say you're not feeling well or you're tired or whatever. But keeping those plans and showing that you're dependable with your friends, it doesn't just foster a better relationship with them, but it also shows, it proves to yourself that you're accountable for your plans, and it just makes you feel better about yourself and who you are as a human. And of course, sticking to those plans and seeing other people also just helps foster a better sense of self. Another way that I learned to build self-confidence was by simply doing things that my ideal self would do. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I went through a lot of life changes recently, and I found it was a really good chance to kind of like reinvent myself and look at the things that were working in my life versus the things that weren't working. And I guess look at the things that I wasn't doing that I wish I would do. Like reverse engineering a path as to how to become that person from where I was. So for example, my ideal self would eat healthy and take care of herself. And one of the things I started doing was going out of my way to make sure I was cooking healthy meals for myself. And I'm by no means a good cook, but I do know the basics of nutrition and taking care of myself. So even when I don't feel like cooking, you know, an elaborate meal, I still make sure that I start my day with a protein smoothie. You know, that's very easy to do. It's something my ideal self would do for herself. And I have, even if I'm having, you know, a not very inspired dinner, like, I don't know, I'm guilty of having instant noodles quite often. I try to make myself a side salad that's packed with superfoods and other things that are, you know, ideal for optimal health, and that's something that I know that my ideal self would do. She would make sure she was taking care of her nutritional needs, even if she, you know, wasn't always getting it perfect. But sticking to those rules that your ideal self would do, it makes you not transform, but take the steps needed to get to that ideal self faster. And in turn, when you start doing those things, you become more confident because you're acting like how your confident ideal self would be acting. And the last thing I did, which was probably one of the most important, was go to therapy. I know that not everyone is privileged enough to be able to do that, but for me, having someone to talk to openly about my struggles and the things that I felt bad about, it was pivotal in opening up the pathways to doing these other things. I think I would have eventually gotten there without therapy, but it definitely kind of expedited the process and helped me come to the conclusion that it's okay to have these feelings of insecurity from time to time, and that everybody has them. It's not just me, it's not just you. It's completely normal to sometimes feel uncomfortable or unsure of yourself, and the only way forward is to keep proving to yourself that you're reliable and that you can, forge a better, more confident future for yourself. So yeah, those were some of the ways that I've forged self-confidence and learned to trust myself. Like I said, I'm still a work in progress, but I think that doing these things consistently have really helped me feel more comfortable in my body and more comfortable as a general human being. What do you do to foster self-confidence? I'd love to know. Feel free to share in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!